How's it going, my Tron people? DrSlaking, the Slacking Doctor, back with something brand new on the channel today. This is the start of a new series called Draft League Review. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take individual Pokemon that I have drafted either on screen or off screen and kind of give my review on the my thoughts on them, the team composition that they're with, how I built the sets, and give you the detailed EV breakdowns and stuff like that on the sets. And then ultimately come to a conclusion of draft or do not draft. My kind of final verdict on whether I think the Pokemon is worth using or whether it isn't worth using. Sometimes that might come with a disclaimer, but in general kind of terms. Now, this is all going to be live edited because I do work a full-time job, and I'll be honest, I don't have a ton of time to edit videos, so I'm going to do it all live, but I think I've set it up so that should be fairly seamless. If you guys like this series, please do subscribe, please do hit that like button so that I know the channel has been growing at a rate that astounds me personally recently, and I'm so grateful for that. So if you guys enjoy this, want to see more of it, let me know and I'll keep doing it. Anyway, what is this team around my face right now? So this is our EWT draft, for those of you that don't know. So what is the EWT? Well, the EWT, I'm just trying to load it up on my system here so I can see it as well in front of me. Here it is. Perfect. It was a Wi-Fi league that I was in recently that I did very, very badly in, and the draft that I had I did not like at all. So we round 1 Terrakion, round 2 Mandibuzz, round 2 Araquanid, so on and so forth. On this team, we are going to be looking at Copperajah specifically. Copperajah was the most controversial pick of all the ones I picked with my front office, maybe alongside Quillfish and Claydol, but Copperajah, especially for the points it cost, I was being told was a waste of points and was not good. So I thought, what an interesting place to start with this series to kind of look at Copperajah, and is it worth drafting or isn't it, upon reflection. So on this team composition, it was one of, 3 Stealth Rockers, the other being Terrakion and Claydol. Claydol is the only one of those two that really enjoys rocking. Terrakion can do it on like offensive rocker sets that force switches and gets rocks up. But really, on Draft League kind of team, you want Terrakion to be firing off as much damage as possible. Draft League teams don't tend to work quite like an OU team might, where you might have 6 offensive pieces on a full sort of hyper offense or offensive OU team. For example, recently I used a double Belly Drum team with Sash Terrakion, plus Belly Drum Komodo, Belly Drum Darmanitan, etc, etc. On a team like that, you can kind of use Terrakion as your offensive rocker, but most people don't draft League teams that are that offensive. Most people draft things like Mandibuzz, Araquanid, Rotom, more balanced picks, right? So suddenly there was a lot of pressure on this draft for Copperajah to be one of the 3 rockers and one of the better rockers compared to Terrakion, and really I found that it wasn't, especially in some matchups. I found it was actually a very similar rocker to Terrakion. Beyond that, it was also pretty pressured to be a good fairy switching on this draft. The other fairy resists being Charizard, which I ended up dropping for Rapidash because I never wanted to bring Charizard to any matchups. And the Toxtricity, which again isn't a very bulky poison type, and Rapidash was not a bulky fire. So again, on this draft, it was really pressured to be the fairy type switch-in, and my team needed a fairy type switch-in with Terrakion and Mandibuzz both being weak to fairy. We did have the Quillfish early on in the draft, but again, Quillfish especially isn't that bulky, and frankly, I dropped that as well because it just wasn't great in any of the matchups. So hugely already, what we're seeing from Copperajah is it's being pressured to do things defensively. It's being pressured to switch in on fairy types, and it's being pressured to try and get rocks up on my draft composition. And it struggled with that a little bit. It isn't as bulky as you'd like, and I do think that this was not the perfect draft to get the most out of Copperajah. Now, that being said, we will look a little bit at Copperajah itself. We'll look at some of the details of its stats. If I can just open the screen here, as I say, live editing. Here we go. There you go. So you can see here its stats. We could talk about that in a little bit more detail now we've looked about my team composition. I want you guys to understand the kind of role it was having to fill on my draft before I can give you an honest reflection on how I feel about it. So, first up, let's look at this thing's abilities. Sheer Force, Heavy Metal, both fantastic abilities. Why? For those of you that are maybe a little bit newer to the format, I'm going to try and give you some insights into these kind of more basic, I think, things, but they're also always useful reminders for those of us that are more experienced anyway. So, with the Life Force and Sheer Force, you get a 1.3 times boost, and you don't take Life Orb recoil. This Sheer Force negates the secondary effects, which includes the recoil of Life Orb. So you're essentially getting the 1.3 times boost from this and the 1.3 times boost from this, with moves like Iron Head that have a secondary effect that you don't take that recoil. So, for example, you wouldn't with Heavy Slam, with Iron Head, but you would with Heavy Slam. Does that make sense? Because this doesn't have the flinch chance, you do take recoil, whereas this does have the flinch chance, so you don't take recoil, but you also can't flinch anymore. As I said, this nullifies the additional effect, whether that's recoil or flinch chances. So, a very long-winded explanation there. It also gets good things, though, in Heat Crash and Heavy Slam, that can take advantage of heavy metal. So what this does is doubles your weight, and then you have two moves that are more effective the heavier you are versus your opponent. So really useful offensive abilities, not defensive abilities. So there's nothing here that's very useful. You'd rather see something like light metal for a defensive ability, which, as it sounds like, it halves your weight instead of doubling it, and then you would take less from a low kick, for example. Why do I say all this? Because if you look at Copperajah's stats, it has a ton of HP, but its defense and SPDEF are really, really poor, and that does matter because basically the way that investing in EVs works, and this will be quite useful for even sort of intermediate Draft League players, is that the more you invest in an already high stat, the less return you get, essentially. It's like the law of diminishing returns. So what that means is if I invest all of this in HP, on the damage calc, which we can actually open up here, let's get that open. So on the damage calc here, I don't know if I need to zoom in a little bit more. If we load up a Copperajah, and then we have a Bomber Snow here. So let's see, it's doing 49 to 58 with Earth Power, right? Let me try and give you an example if we just go to a blank set. So before any investment at all, it's doing 82 to 96, right? If we put 252 in HP, it's now doing 70, so we've reduced that min roll by 12%. If I put this in SPDEF instead, hopefully this proves my point, yeah, we're down to 60, so that's an extra 10% compared to putting it into HP. So it's actually reduced it by, what was it, 20% there, 22%, is that right? Yeah, by 22% on that min roll. Why that is because this HP stat is already so big that by investing into it, we're not getting much for our kind of investment. We're not getting the returns back. So you'll see this when I show you my Copperajah sets. When you're building Copperajah, you kind of want to build it in specific one defense or the other to take your hits. And what that means is you're going to be decently bulky on one side, but you're going to be very, very frail on the other. So you have to tailor your Copperajah to do certain things in the Draft League format. And of course, if you're playing an OU, if you're playing whatever, it's different. This is Draft League specifically. So I think if you want to draft Copperajah and you want to use it well, you have to bear that in mind when you're building it, how you're going to invest in bulk. The next thing is, it is very slow. 30 base speed means it's very good on Trick Room, but it's not even going to be great on webs. On webs, it might outspeed some walls, like a Clefable, for example, a Mandibuzz, some things that don't run speed investment typically. I mean, Mandibuzz wouldn't be affected by webs, but you get the idea. Anything like that, sure, webs would help with that a little bit. But realistically, you're still not going to beat offensive mons on webs. You're still not going to outspeed like a Terrakion or something, right? So, its speed tier is quite Trick Room reliant. It wants Trick Room support. I thought maybe, I think Claydol gets Trick Room if I'm not mistaken. So I thought on my team composition, maybe I would run something like Trick Room Teleport. And I would get that minus priority switch out if you don't know what Teleport does. And then we would go into the Trick Room for the Copperajah. If you don't know what Trick Room does, it says here, it basically turn order is reversed. What that means is speed tiers are reversed. So the slower mons suddenly become the fastest mons, apart from priority. So it kind of was that idea. Never pulled that off. I never clicked Teleport Trick Room. I don't think it ever happened. I think I maybe brought it in a mock once and it did nothing. Yeah, really, I thought it would be good in practice, but I didn't have a Trick Room draft, as you've already seen, so did not function how I wanted it to. So what I ended up doing instead, as you'll see in a second, so overall, my take on Copperajah's stats is incredibly physically strong. Not bad special coverage. I don't know if it gets, like, any kind of special coverage that would be especially useful. You could get like an Earth Power. I don't know, let's say you were playing like a Heatran that you expected to be Fizz Def. You could nuke it with a Sheer Force, Life Orb, Earth Power, probably. Something like that. But you would kill it with an Earthquake anyway, so I don't know. It's not great. It's not great. But the physical offense is amazing. The HP stat is solid, so that when you do invest in one of your defenses, you become decently bulky. that's my kind of take on its stats. Now let's look at how I built it. So the first game we've got here is against Sparrows, which with a bit of live editing, you can see his draft. So unfortunately, I can't see it without looking over to the side there, which I didn't think about prior to this. But anyway, so you can see his draft over there. I wonder if I can do this another way. No, we'll stick with this for now. Maybe I'll improve this for the next video. This is going to be something I can work on. So let's talk about these stats here and my investment. This looks like a crazy EV spread, and anyone that knows me knows I don't like what people now call the Chinese EV spreads, coined by Envy, I think. These wild, like, everything invested EV spreads. I think most of them are greedy. I think that's the word I would use. I think they're trying to eke out each damage roll, and sometimes just put max attack, sometimes just put max per death, and just live hits instead of being greedy on your specific damage rolls. But here, I got greedy because with Copperajah, I felt like this was a Pokemon where I had to do that. So I got an odd HP stat here. It really doesn't matter, but it's like an OCD of mine that I'll pretty much always have an odd HP stat. You basically take less chip from entry hazards. Against his team, I'm just looking now, he has no spikes. Oh, he has Golisopod, so I guess it was relevant for Golisopod. You'll see I do this even when I'm not playing a team with spikes. Stealth Rocks are going to do nothing to a steel type anyway, but it's just a little nitpick of mine that I always try and have an odd HP stat. Have then just gone max per def, as we saw in that Aboma Snow Calc. We've got a little bit slapped in defense and quite a bit slapped into speed as well as attack. So what I'll have done here more than likely is I'll have figured out how I can 2-hit KO things with Iron Head without any kind of boost. I've got the Occa Berry here so that I can take a flamethrower from the Noivern. I know this was designed to switch in on Noivern, and that's why I had it so spadef. I can take Hurricanes, I can take Draco Meteors. I don't have reliable recovery, which is a bit of a pain in the neck. But at least I can soak up a couple of hits and fire off some big hits back. I have Iron Head, which hits his whole team really hard, apart from the Excadrill and the Ludicolo and Golisopod. Well, neither of those, or none of those, want to take a Power Whip. Power Whip is neutral to all of them. So I felt like that was really good coverage for me. Just Steel plus Grass, hit everything on his team for at least neutral damage. The reason that I went for Iron Head over Heavy Slam in this game will have been to hit things like the Tyranitar that would be very heavy. Golisopod, I think, is quite heavy. And probably Drill is probably quite heavy, so it probably gets more damage on Drill as well, although I wouldn't swear to that. So, but I imagine it's primarily Tyranitar, and I imagine Golisopod as well. Otherwise, maybe I could have gone Heavy Slam. We've got Rocks. Obviously, like I said, this was pressure to get Rocks up in a lot of games, but it actually in this game doesn't have too bad of a time because his potential Defogger is Noivern, or his potential Spinner is Excadrill and Hitmontop. Well, this thing gets Rocks up on 2 of those in Noivern and Drill that it might force out because he might fear the Shuckerberry with Drill. I can try and bluff that, and he might not be able to beat me with Noivern. So 2 of his removal I can kind of beat, whereas the Hitmontop will beat me if he brings that. But so not a horrible rocker in this matchup. Whirlwind was for the Gothitelle because I didn't want to get trapped by Gothitelle. So you can see here, as I say, I probably had Iron Head so that I could 2-hit KO. Let's see. The Noivern and Oko, the Rabombi, I would think, would easily do that. Maybe it was so that Power Whip 2-hit KO'd Excadrill. Maybe that was what the investment was for. But you can see kind of how I built the set. So moving on to the next game that I brought it for, and you can see here I only brought it 3 times, and we will get onto that. The next game I brought it for was against Frosted. The first game was a game I won. This one was a game I lost, unsurprising in my EWT season. But you can see here this set is very different again. So again, just rounding it up with that nice round 199 HP stat. And then I've got quite a bit of attack again, but this time with a jolly, really speedy nature. And if we look at Frost's team, I believe I wanted to outspeed Vileplume and possibly Vaporeon, but definitely Vileplume. Let's check that. So I went to 88 speed. So let's see Vaporeon at level 50. Yeah, so you can see I just had a few points faster than Vaporeon here, trying to outspeed that. I thought I would. So I could try, and in the end it was Scarf Vaporeon, so it didn't matter anyway. I caught it with a Power Whip on the switch in the actual game. And of course, if you want to check out these games, the team names for my opponents are above there, or I should point down here, are above their drafts, so you can go and look for my game versus the Copenhagen Swordsbucks, the New England Evolutions, and the Kentucky Torracats if you want to see these sets in action to get more of a reflection. But anyway, Again, we've got enough attack here where I imagine Power Whip, probably Oko's non-Fizz Death Vaporeon, almost certainly that would be the calc. Heat Crash, I imagine, will Oko a max HP Vileplume, that's max HP Vaporeon as well, almost certainly. And then the Spadef, everything else would just be slapped into Spadef so that I can take any kind of hits from Vileplume, because with the safety goggles on, I know this was my Vileplume switching. I basically can't get hit by Hail, which was really nice because I was also wanting to switch in on the Ninetales, and I will be immune to Sleep Powder or anything like that from the Vileplume. So I could switch on Ninetales, I could switch on Vileplume, I could fire off big Heat Crashes, big Heavy Slams. Now, this game is a key example of why you do not want Copperajah to be your designated rocker in every game it comes to. You're already seeing 2 games now, 2 lots of Stealth Rocks. I needed Rock Slide in this game because I could not break Frosted's Rotom Heat, and in my opinion that's pretty much what lost me the game there. That having to deal with that thing, having to make aggressive doubles into Terrakion every time it hit the field was an absolute nightmare for me. It had heavy duty boots, so my Stealth Rocks weren't wearing it down, and I couldn't hit it because I didn't have Rock Slide to try and make the prediction and clap the Rotom Heat on switching. So this is where it's a very good example of just needing that extra coverage move, and if I had it, this would have been a phenomenal wall breaker in this game. And I think that's what's crucial here, is that Copperajah, if you want to draft it and you want to get the most out of it, you want to see a set like this, a speedy, bulky, offensive set with a bit of everything, and you want to see 4 attacks, and you just want to be clicking buttons, because this thing is strong, and this set would have gone crazy against Frosted if I hadn't brought Stealth Rock. I mean, if you look at her team, Dragapult will not take a heavy slam, Ninetales will not take a heavy slam, Obstagoon will not like taking a heavy slam, Rotom Heat won't take a Rock Slide, Vaporeon won't take a Power Whip, Vileplume won't take a Heat Crash, Gerda probably is the best switching, but won't love a heavy slam, especially if you have something to soak up a Drain Punch without having reliable recovery on Gerda. Clefairy doesn't want a heavy slam. Bronzong, if it's heat proof, does not want a Heat Crash. That's why I went for the Heavy Metal Heat Crash, so that I could hit the Bronzong in this particular matchup. And Stunfisk will not want a Power Whip. So you can see here, this would destroy my opponent's team if I just brought coverage for that Rotom. And that's where it being a rocker is just not good on this thing at all. So, yeah, this set in the end, very underwhelming. It did clap the Vaporeon on switching, as I said, but unfortunately that was all it was able to do in the game, really. I had to keep doubling into my Terrakion, making really risky plays with my Terrakion, and in the end I just got worn down by the Ninetales Moonblast because I couldn't have leftovers and reliable recovery. So, yeah, it falls victim of not having good recovery. I didn't have a Wish Passer. I think this thing would be really good with a Wish Passer, I really do. I think with like a Fable, this thing would be heat. But yeah, it fell foul of not having the right team support in this matchup and not having the right moves. So, moving on to the last set versus Mid Pokemaster here. Shout out to him, good friend of mine. We can see his team. Again, we finally got to bring a set with no Stealth Rocks, and it looks phenomenal. Look at this matchup. Iron Head plus Rock Slide hits Salazzle, it hits Heliolisk. We had, I could have brought Body Press for the Heliolisk, but I actually brought Heat Crash because if that thing was dry skin, which I thought it would be, then I'm going to do a whole lot more with Heat Crash. So yeah, we were able to run Sheer Force, but with the Heat Crash as well on there. So we're hitting Salazzle, we're hitting Heliolisk, Komodo. We could have brought Play Rough, and I did bluff that a little bit in the game, if I remember correctly. Blastoise doesn't want a Power Whip. Sandaconda doesn't want a Power Whip. Eldegoss is trash. Doesn't want to hit heavy. Doesn't want a High Head or Heat Crash anyway. Grimmsnarl did not want an Iron Head. Reuniclus does not want an Iron Head. Avalugg in the end really didn't like taking Iron Heads and Heat Crashes from this thing. Actually, it surprised me because Avalugg is really bulky. But if we just take this set here and we run some calcs, it should give you the idea of the power of this thing here. So let's import this into the damage calc. And let's get a bit of an idea for you. So, we can see the Copperajah versus Avalugg at level 50. So you can see even a fully Fizz Death Avalugg with heavy duty boots on has a 49.6% chance to 2-hit KO. So if he's got no prior chip, it's still a coin flip whether we 2-hit KO him with the Iron Head, which shows you like Avalugg is a... I mean, look at these stats. Like, this thing is an absolute monster, and if he was anything but max Fizz Def, let's say he was like Spadef, which a lot of the times they can be, to try and cover that Spadef weakness, you're just going to obliterate him. And I could have brought Flash Cannon on this set if I really wanted to bait an Everlug and destroy it, because its special attack with Sheer Force is usable. So, in the end, we didn't do that, though. Ironhead will run through that thing, and that just shows you how strong this thing is. Its matchup was amazing here. Escavalier doesn't want to take a Heat Crash. I have enough speed, I believe, for Reuniclus and Escavalier running a bit of speed. I don't think this will outspeed anything like the Blastoise or the Sandaconda that are that little bit faster. So this was really just, I probably figured out a damage roll from Reuniclus on my Spadef variant, and then just dumped the rest in speed after I'd got max attack, so to get the best damage roll I could on Everlug. So this is a good case of where I say, you know, just dump it all in attack, like just get the best damage rolls you can. So they were my Copperajah sets. Now, how did it actually perform in those games? It went 2 and 2 in 3 games. I lost 2 and I won 1. Crucially, I only brought it to 3 games in a 7-game season. Less than 50% of my games this came to, because it isn't easy to use this Pokemon without the right team support, without other good rockers to support it and take away the stealth rocks from its moveset, without wish support maybe to help keep it healthy. It is a very difficult Pokemon to use well. Now, it did still go 2 for 2, so it didn't finish negative or anything like that, and I felt like it was a massive offensive presence in every game I brought it to. I felt like my opponents really struggled to switch around it. Frosted, for example, had been going into Rotom Heat on it so much that she started to fear the Rock Slide and went into Vaporeon when I clicked the Power Whip, predicting it, and got big damage off. In fact, I think I O-code the Vaporeon. So that just shows you that this thing really does force difficult situations for your opponent. Its coverage is fantastic. Like I said, Mid was afraid to set up with his Komodo on it because he could fear the play rough. So even though I think he had the Roselli Berry, he still had to fear the play rough. So with a Sheer Force, Life Orb, play rough, thing's going to destroy Komodo. So I think this thing has a huge amount of potential in the Draft League format if it is drafted on very specific team compositions, and that is where it's difficult, because you need to get good rockers, you need to get good wish support, it wouldn't mind some good trick room, it wouldn't hate some sticky webs, but I would not draft it again on this team composition. I would not draft it on what I would call a balanced team. I think if we just flick back to my EWT draft here, I would call this balance. I have Wall Breakers in Toxtricity and Terrakion. I have Pivots in Mandibuzz, Rotom. I have Hazard Support in Araquanid, Quillfish. This is the type of team that has a little bit of everything, but not a specialist in anything. And I think Copperajah suffered. I think Copperajah wanted to be freed up to be the offensive powerhouse it has the capabilities of being, but never got to be on this team. So if you want a Steel type to form a part of an offensive core, if you draft something like, for example, let's say you wanted to draft, I should also say this was in a non-Nat Dex. This was a Wi-Fi format. I should have clarified that at the beginning. I'm sorry, in future episodes I'll try to clarify what format I was using it in. So this was pre-DLC restricted Wi-Fi format. But if you wanted to draft this alongside, I'm trying to think of a special Fairy or Dragon Wall Breaker that I think, let's say you wanted to draft this alongside Hydreigon. Hydreigon would beat the Fairy type, would lose to the Fairy types that Copperajah can switch in on and apply offensive pressure. Hydreigon could U-turn out into your Copperajah to bring your Copperajah free in on a Fairy, as a Fairy comes hard in on your Hydreigon. Let's just have a look at this. So what I'm proposing here is a call like this where, you know, you could run, for example, Choice Scarf, and you could run Dark Pulse, Draco, and then, I don't know, let's say you ran like Dragon Pulse or something as the last move in U-turn. So as their Fairy comes hard in on you, expecting the Dark or the Dragon move, you click U-turn and you go out into your 4 attacks Copperajah and you get to just deal big damage. Now, what's likely to come in on you is a Steel type. Steel types do come in on Copperajah. The other things are Bulky Waters and Bulky Fires. Now, Hydreigon doesn't care too much about the Bulky Waters and the Bulky Fires, as it resists both. So what you can do is you can click your Heavy Slammers, Blastoise comes out, then you can go straight back into your Hydreigon on Scold, take nothing, you don't care if you get burnt, and you can fire off a Draco, or you can U-turn straight back into your Copperajah, and the next time you can make the Power Whip after you've conditioned your opponent into going into their Blastoise. So you can kind of play it like that, or alternatively, if a Steel type wants to come in on Copperajah and you slowly whittle down that Steel type, maybe you bring Shuckerberry Copperajah so that you take your opponent's Earthquake and you Earthquake them back. Now suddenly your Draco Meteor in that end game could be really nice if you have good team support for the fairy as well. So, or if your opponent doesn't bring their fairy type. So it's that kind of thing where Hydreigon is primarily checked by steals and fairies. Copperajah beats fairies, but is also checked by steals. So suddenly, do you bring a steel type that's Spadef for Hydreigon or Fizdef for Copperajah? You pressure the each other's checks on both sides, which makes incredibly difficult building in Draft League. And remember, this is crucial for Draft League. Shout out to Checkmate Ben, who taught me all of this many years ago. He taught me how you kind of build offensive cores that pressure together. So to me, if I were to draft this thing again, I would love to see it on a team with like Clefable, Hydreigon, Copperajah. That to me, oof, wish support, good pivot to bring in the Copperajah on fairy types. That team would go crazy to me. Something to bring on the bulky fires and the bulky waters as well in Hydreigon. Yeah, I would use the hell out of this team. I would love using this team. And of course, if you beat down the steals for Clefable, maybe Clefable becomes a defensive win con in the end game that they're not able to break. So that is my kind of take on Copperajah. My final verdict is do draft Copperajah, but only draft it on the right team composition. That's my thoughts on this Pokemon. This video might have ended up being a little bit longer than I'd initially intended, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. I tried to be as detailed as I could. If you have feedback for this series, other Pokemon that I've drafted before that you'd like to hear my thoughts on, or feedback on how you think this video could have been better, I would love to hear that down below. And if you've made it this far, there should be a pinned comment which will tell you to check the description for our new subscriber Discord server. It's already full of some great people. Come out, hang out with us. You can give me feedback on these videos and you can find out what's going on with the channel and get sneak previews of videos that are coming up. Anyway, I'm going to stop rambling on now. I think this will be a fun series, right? Let me know if you guys are into it. If you're not, by all means, just let me know that you're not and I'll do something different. Regardless, thank you so much for loafing around with me and I'll catch you again next time.